Gina, thank you so much for being here today. Do you prefer Gina or Gina Marie?
You know what? Either way.
Okay, awesome.
Some people call me Gina Marie, and I'm like, oh. And then most people just call me Gina.
All right, as long as it's not like
your family. Oh,
no, I was going to say, as long as it doesn't remind you of like your mother being mad at you, right?
No, I've tried to take that back. Like I've tried to own that. Like this is my name, and I feel good about it.
I love it. All right, well, thank you so much for joining me. Let's get started. I want to hear about your diagnosis journey. How long ago were you diagnosed? This mostly started through your children, right? As many middle-aged women experience. So why don't you walk us through?
Of us too. Yeah. I will try and stay succinct, but we all know how that can be. So I am. How old am I? I'm 45. Yeah. Oh, first of all, I always said I would never be one of those women that like forgot how old she was, but. I was like, that's ridiculous. Everybody knows how old they are. But now I'm like, wait, hold on, wait. 77. I can't do the math. Right. Remember when I was, yeah. So I'm 45 now, and I just got my diagnosis like in January. Currently it is June. So like 6 months ago, less than around, like it's so brand new for me. Mm-hmm. But it was like on my mind only because of social media, right? Just that whole thing that we all kind of do that I only know because I've been listening to your podcast, that like, oh, this is normal. This is like what we do. We like start liking these, reels and TikToks and things. And by the way, I'm not on TikTok because I think that would be like really detrimental. I would never do anything else. So I'm only on Instagram. But like people, repost TikToks on Instagram all the time. But, there are like so many ADHD things and stuff. And I was like, well, I'm like, everybody does that, like, oh, that's like totally normal. And this is like, I guess also an ADHD thing. And then like more and more, because the algorithm, knows you better than you do. And all of a sudden everything is just like ADHD. And I was just thinking, I was like, oh, that's, I don't know, maybe this is like some weird, like, Gen Z thing, like everybody has ADHD and it's just like this new thing, but it's not real, right? It's not real. So my children currently 11 and 6, kind of at the time that all of this really began, we'd been having some struggles with my younger daughter. I'm like fidgeting and touching my fingers as I'm talking because I can't otherwise, right? So we were having some troubles with my younger daughter. Just like so big emotions, giant, not even tantrums. I thought they were tantrums, but they were meltdowns. And I felt like I couldn't connect with her like I could my older daughter. And she started doing these things, she was lining up toys, all categorizing things and always putting things in lines and building these intricate towers and stuff and walking around on her tiptoes. And, some of the things that anecdotally, like, oh, that might be autism and stuff. And so we were just like, oh, I mean, it wouldn't hurt to like check it out. And so we go through and it takes like this long, unbelievably long process to even get an appointment. And the first appointment is just, kind of like a screening appointment before they even allow you to have an appointment. So we finally get the appointment. And as I'm going through all the questionnaires, I'm just like, I mean, some of these things are definitely not her. But I was like, if I was answering these questions for my other daughter, what would that look like? And one of the questionnaires in particular at the bottom of the paperwork, like it's very obvious that somebody who's not the trained doctor is like doing the initial like write-ups of these papers just before they go to the doctor, right? So on the bottom, there was like a scoring, like if you have like 50 to 60, then you're, high level of suspected autism, or if you have like, mostly green ones, it's like ADHD or whatever the qualifications were on the bottom. It was like a cheat sheet for someone who was adding up and tallying the score. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, oh, well, let me just think, just kind of in my head. And more and more I was seeing the ADHD thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder if my older daughter has ADHD. And I was like, hold up. I mean, I have been liking all those TikToks. I have been liking all those Instagrams. And like my older daughter is so much like me that it was just kind of scary, and for anybody out there who's kind of in this like I wonder process. Like it can be kind of a scary thing because it's so unknown and you never thought of it in your whole life. And it's like, wait, everything I know about myself might just have changed. I don't know. And so, of course, the process to get my older daughter, by the way, my younger daughter was diagnosed with autism. Level 1, which would have been called Asperger's before. But, it's just all autism now. And I was like, well, I mean, I'm gifted because I was, a gifted student when I was younger. And so I just start going down these rabbit holes like we do and just searching everywhere on the internet for all these things. And I keep finding giftedness is, on a spectrum of its own. And I'm like, wait, what? And you never grow out of giftedness. I was like, wait, this is something that's like to do with your brain. It's not just you did well in school. Hold on a second, And anyways, I'm starting to ramble. So my older daughter took forever to get, in the queue. And during that process, I was like, what's going on here? How am I going to even get like assessed? Like, this is so difficult from everything I'm seeing online. And of course, there's the ADHD online company, and there's the Done First company. There's these companies that, of course, the algorithm kept feeding me. And so I thought, I have insurance, and I know that like therapists and all this stuff is all covered. Yet at the time, I'm getting way ahead of myself. I was experiencing a crisis myself while all of this was happening with my kids. And so I felt like my entire life was like just completely crumbling around me. And it was the pandemic. Like, it's like all of this at the same time. And I was like, is it the pandemic? Is it this? Is it that? But regardless, I couldn't like let my children, fail. And that even made things worse for me. So I was just having like the hardest time keeping my head above water, and even going in and trying to ask the doctor if I had, anything that might be, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't bring myself. I couldn't do it. It was too hard, which I look back now and I'm like, obviously. But it was so overwhelming. It was too hard. I couldn't. And I thought, the easier thing to do would just to be one of these online things. And I'll like pay for that service just to see, like, I'm not going to, go get too involved with my medical insurance. And I told my husband, he's like, yeah, I guess, whatever, he doesn't really get in my way. So that's cool. So I did the Done First. I talked to the people. They were like, yeah, for sure. It could be bipolar. And I was like, oh my gosh, that threw me for a loop. And like, but if we put you on atomoxetine, because we can't prescribe any stimulants. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't even know. I don't even know what we're talking about right now. So they're like, if we do this, then just we have to watch out, because if it's bipolar, it could make you go manic. So then I was terrified that I was like, oh, what if I am bipolar? I'm going to go manic. So I start the medicine and nothing's changing. And they're like, it takes up to 2 months. Nothing's going on. And all of a sudden, like I had stopped doing all my hobbies. I felt like I couldn't do this is up before this moment. I couldn't do my job. I was no longer supporting my online students. I could not do anything more. All of a sudden, I started like picking up a little hobby. I was like, oh, everybody was doing sourdough. I think I'm going to start doing sourdough. I think I could do that. I started doing that. And then I was like, ooh, I wonder if I could update this program and I could make a new program for such and such or whatever. And just slowly, like, ideas and creativity started flowing back to me. And I was telling my best friend, I was like, I don't think it's working. And she's like, Gina, you're doing hobbies again. You're doing things. And I'm like, oh yeah. And also, I just wanted to mention this. I know it's everywhere. I didn't know binge eating was a thing. I didn't know that was an ADHD thing. And I also didn't realize I'd struggled with this like for as long as I can remember. When things were hard, when I was overwhelmed, whatever was going on, I would like just keep stuffing chocolate and chips and just like whatever. And sometimes I could, it wasn't so terrible, but like I would get into these moments that I was like, oh, I need something. And I had gotten into that place and I had put on like 30 pounds in like not a very long amount of time. And so I wasn't doing that anymore. I wasn't standing in front of the pantry, I noticed. And I was like starting to think of making healthy decisions like I would normally think of as myself. First of all, I don't eat meat. I don't eat dairy. I've been quote unquote, I don't like the term vegan, but I've been essentially vegan for like 13 years. And there's a way to be a trash can vegan. Like there is for sure. And which is what I had been doing. But I was like, oh, I can eat some quinoa or I can eat a baked potato. And, and normally when I'm well, food is not that important of a thing to me. It's fuel. But when I'm not well, it's snack, stop. Mm-hmm. So that's what the atomoxetine had done for me. And I didn't realize it. And so that was kind of amazing. And then all of a sudden I had capacity to talk to doctors, and the one thing about at the time, that service did not give you a diagnosis that you could take anywhere. It was just within the service. So there was this other ADHD online that you guys have talked about that would give you a diagnosis you could take to your psychiatrist. So I went through that process, which by the way, was while I was still not fully medicated yet. It hadn't been all the way. So it took me a month to finish that questionnaire, which is like so intense. It just took so long for me to keep coming back and answering. And I was like, oh, this is overwhelming. I can't do it. And finally I finished it. And then like 3 weeks later, they gave me that, inattentive ADHD. And I was like, wow, like this is a real thing, which I still question, right? Like, did I fool them? Like you guys always say, like, did I just answer the questions correctly? And, do I actually have ADHD? And, yes, absolutely I do. It's like, no question. Truly. But then I was able to take it to a psychiatrist and, she's been working with me and, I will have to say that we were going to move me to a stimulant. We're going to move me to Vyvanse. And, it's been such a difficult process with like shortages of a lot of medications, insurance not necessarily wanting to pay for it, needing prior authorizations. It's been like so long. So in that process of trying to get on the stimulant, we are supposed to be like tapering off of the non-stimulant and tapering on to the stimulant. And they had written the prescription. I couldn't get the medication. And then, the overwhelm and like not doing things we're supposed to do made it so that I was without medication for like a little over 2 weeks. And I felt life again without medication. And I recognized what an ADHD episode felt like because I hadn't had necessarily an episode, is what I call it, in a long time. And it felt very familiar. And I was like, oh, this is how I've felt many times in my life, but I didn't know what that was. It was just like normal. But now that I've had this little break from it, and now that I'm back to experiencing that again, it's just this feeling of just like, I want to do something. I can't, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And my older daughter, I think she's got a combined type ADHD. She was finally diagnosed. She would do this thing. We had a trampoline in our living room because she couldn't sit still. These are classic things. Mm-hmm. She would actually run in circles. And like, it's a joke. People say like, oh, they're running in circles. Like she would actually run in circles, run around, and she could not keep herself contained. And that's how I felt. Like, I felt like I kind of want to run around in a circle right now. Like I just want to just run around and do these like ridiculous, like jump around back and forth, like do these weird things for who knows what. And I also kind of want to punch somebody in the face, but I know I shouldn't punch anybody in the face, but I kind of want to. And it was like this, like, and it was almost like painful and frustrating. And it made me realize this is what my older daughter has been doing for a long time. And especially, children. And I remember feeling this way, like, I'm going to pick on somebody. I'm going to go start a fight. I'm going to, and it's all that seeking dopamine. And when I got back on the medication, it took me like 3 days for that to like quiet down. And I was like, oh, yes, 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 yes. So I think we've closed the loop. That's how
I'm just so fascinated. I'm like, I could listen to this whole thread for hours because there's, oh God, there was so much in there. Gosh, what do I want to go back to? I feel like, you know, I'm curious with your youngest, when you were talking about the tantrums, it reminded me of, was she late in terms of verbal stuff?
No, neither of mine were.
Because one of the things that I've been thinking about with my son, who sounded very similar, had a lot of tantrums because he wasn't verbal. And we actually we had him tested for autism when he was a kid because he was very similar to, like you were saying, about the lining things up.
Yeah.
And he played independently for hours, which my daughter like never did that. She was always needed to be right next to me, and she was always like making me play dolls with her and all of that horrible stuff. And right. And he would play for hours by himself, and I was like, I don't want to interrupt him, but I also don't know what to do right now.
Totally.
But one of the things I always thought about with the tantrums was just this idea that like he was incapable of expressing his articulating his emotions. And it's like you notice, because that's a lot of the things that I experience even as an adult, right? Like how difficult it is sometimes to explain, which you actually just beautifully did, some of those episodes, some of those feelings in us, you know, that like jumping out of our skin feeling, or, you know, I don't even know what do you call it. It's like when you just get overtaken by all the things, right? And that's something that I've had a really hard time articulating to my family. I feel like I'm better now that I've had this diagnosis and I really understand what's going on. But like it happened the other day to my son. We were just playing tennis and he was, you know, he wasn't doing well. He was like kept hitting the net with his serve and he was getting really, really frustrated. And then we left early and he was like, you know, started tearing up. And I was like, buddy, what's wrong? And he was like, I'm so mad at my school and I got a sunburn. And he just like listed all these things that had nothing to do with tennis, right? And I just, you know, that feeling where it's like all of a sudden everything that is wrong with the world comes bubbling up. And I felt like that was such an ADHD moment, right? Where you're just like, what isn't wrong right now?
Right.
And I just like my heart went out to him because I was like, I get it, right? Like I get it when, you know, one wrong move, suddenly it's like everything in the world is coming back and it's just all the things all at once.
Yeah, and it's kind of that rejection thing too, even though it's not necessarily directed right at you, but like everything is going wrong. So like nothing's ever going to go right for me. Like everything's terrible. It all sucks.
Right? Yeah. And just sort of like imagining how that must feel at a very young age when you can't really articulate that, you can't communicate that. And so I think it's why younger neurodivergent kids tend to have those tantrums, right? Or tend to have pathological demand avoidance, which is a term I hate. But, you know, a lot of that.
But I see it. I know what it is.
I know, right? I mean, I think a lot of us have it, but I don't think it's pathological. But, you know, just a lot of that kind of the pushback, right? That anger that seems to come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I also really liked the fact that you had talked about it taking 2 months, because I think that's something a lot of us give up on, you know, which is like, oh my goodness, this isn't the you know, miracle drug I thought it was going to be after a week. So peace out. And like we dip out. And so, I certainly did that. You know, I've had some regrets about my experiences with just like dismissing medication because it wasn't, you know, it didn't feel right or something, and kind of wishing I could go back and do that. So I'm glad you shared that, because I don't feel like we've talked a lot about atomoxetine on this podcast.
I definitely wanted to speak about it because it is really a recent thing that I'm dealing with, and we're actually, my daughter just got prescribed atomoxetine as well, which is only available in a pill right now, and
when she's 11, that's tough.
Absolute, just like that whole demand avoidance thing. I'm not going to say pathological, but she's just like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not taking a pill. In fact, I'm not going to take any medication. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Here goes 11. And I'm like, okay, breathe, Gina, breathe. Like, this is going to take us like 3 weeks for her to finally, I know I know the drill. It's going to take us like 3 weeks. We're going to talk about it. She's going to like stomp her feet. She's probably going to like kick a wall or something. Like, I don't know, something's going to break. Normal. And like, this is all normal stuff. I'm used to it. And then all of a sudden she's going to go, fine, I'll try it. And then she'll be like, that wasn't that bad. And I'll go, okay, well, good. That's great. I'm glad. It's such a normal thing. Like, just wait her out. I'm always telling my husband, he's always like, oh my God. And I'm like, just wait her out. Seriously. She's going to say no. She's going to stomp her feet and she's going to act like she's going to like bite you, but it's actually it'll work it out. It's going to be, just breathe, like just walk around the house, go take a walk. I don't know. You'll be fine, but no, I actually haven't heard a lot of people talk, and I'm not saying I'm like this huge fan. I don't work for, Stratera or the companies that make Oxytocin or whatever else, but I think it's overlooked. And I think that first line treatment for ADHD is, a stimulant. And during this like hyper focus of learning everything I can possibly learn about ADHD and, all about neurodiversities and all the different things, is the realization that when I first started taking it, I expected it to work right away, for one. I expected it to immediately cure my ADHD. I was like, oh, this is going to take it away, and now I'll be normal, fantastic. And the long road to realizing, which honestly, it's been like 6 months, so it's not really a long road. Yeah, but it feels
but that's like 10 years of ADHD
like,
years.
It does. It feels like, oh my God, this is taking me forever. Anyway, so where was I? What was I saying? Get back on track. Come back. Okay, yes, here we are. So the idea that there's something wrong with our brain, right? And the majority of people who are treating ADHD and treating, autism and treating dyslexia, treating anything, whatever else, are coming from a neurotypical viewpoint. And, so this is wrong. And our world is not built for us, which, has been talked about on this podcast. And I think a lot of us are starting to realize there's nothing wrong with us, right? Like, let's just stop there for a second. There is nothing wrong. Nothing wrong. And, for the past 2 weeks, I haven't been listening to your podcast, even though I've been like binging it at 1.7 speed, just as fast as I possibly can. But because people talk too slow. Oh, God. Oh, I think it's just hurry up, get to the point. So
I know, right? I feel like when people talk to me in real life, they must be like, why do you talk so slow?
Oh, right. Because we're all listening to it on, high speed. But just the idea that we're, not right, and that there's a disorder, that there's, a problem, but we're not. We're just not. This world wasn't made for us. And the people who got to the places, I love. Again, I wasn't listening to your podcast for the last 2 weeks because I've been listening to what's that one? Not Broken. Your Brain Is Not Broken. And my
the
God,
audiobook?
Yes.
Oh, it's so good, right?
Just so much. And that was, of course, on, the last podcast I listened to was when you were interviewing that author. And I was like, I must listen to this right now. Immediately, switch over to that one. Okay, cool. So I've been listening to that, and it's just, so good. And of course, I listened to ADHD 2.0 and all these different things, right? And what I haven't said on this podcast yet, that's like in my mind, of course, because in my head, I've said everything already. But, my older daughter also got diagnosed about this exact same time with dyslexia. And we'd been struggling for years with she is so, oh my gosh, she is so smart. She is intelligent beyond like measure. She was not even 3 years old. And we're driving and she says, hey, Daddy, hum like this. And she hums this song for him to, this tune, the thing for him to hum. And then she says, Mama, now do this at the same time. And I do that. And then she does this little scat over the top of it. It's just she put that together in her brain. And we were just like, oh my God. We're very musical and very theatrical. It's like in my family, and we're just like, oh, this is so good. Oh, the Rodriguez is strong in her. Oh, and but she was so smart. And why was reading so hard? Why was writing a sentence so hard. And like, I remember during the pandemic, I was homeschooling her, and she's supposed to write a paragraph, and she just rips her book apart and throws it down the stairs. She wasn't having any of it. And it was like, I just don't understand. We took her to a tutoring center. You know, we paid so much money for the tutoring, and they're like, you know, and she's a terrible speller. Oh my gosh, what are we supposed to do? Like, she can't spell any words. It's all like kindergarten spelling, and here she's in third grade. And they're like, oh, you know, spelling isn't important anymore. We're going to move beyond that. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I don't have to worry about that. And they're like, you know, and in the future, everybody's going to be using text to speech anyway. So, you know, just have her write text to speech. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. That doesn't seem like it's solving the problem that we're having, but all right, we'll do that. You know, and then after that program was done, I felt like she still wasn't like progressing at all. She wasn't better. And so we take her, I'm like, oh, let's go over to like another tutoring center. And all these assessments that they were assessing her were saying that she was missing key phonological and orthographic and all these different things from like that she should have had from first grade. And, you know, come to find out after, you know, all of this stuff, when we finally got into that ADHD assessment, the psychologist there was like, you know, I'm actually thinking this might be a learning disability, which kind of turned me on to like, oh, I hadn't even considered. And so we go and have her tested for that, and we find out she's dyslexic. And I'm like, this is everything, you know? And once again, it's a brain programming, right? So the people that are treating dyslexia, and whenever there's an ad that I've been targeted for this school, which just drives me nuts. It's a school for dyslexic students. And it says, see if your child is at risk for dyslexia. And I'm like, oh, you guys are so wrong. You're a dyslexia school. Like, you're a school. Risk. Either you are or you're not. You don't develop it. You know, like, she might become dyslexic. Let's just beware. We can solve that. We can avert that. Like, you know, if we go here, they won't be dyslexic. No, that is not the case at all. And so we're in California. Our governor currently, Newsom, is dyslexic as well. I didn't know that. Just, of course, you know, you go down the rabbit hole and you find out everything, like who's all dyslexic, Richard Branson, like all these different people. I'm like, oh my gosh. I've watched, what is that? Oh my gosh. The picture I'm seeing is like Time's Up, but that's not what it is. The big picture. Yes, there we go. Here it is.
Oh,
I'm like,
okay.
hold on. I had to follow the pathways in my brain that are all crooked, and I'm like, hold on. I see the picture. There's a clock, and there's, you know, I had to make all these different little like leaps to find the information, which is stored there. I just, you know, it takes a minute. So it's, you know, the big picture, or the big picture, or the bigger picture, dyslexia, about dyslexia. If you search that, you can find it. Phenomenal about that. And then I also watched what is that? The Disruptors. That's another.
I was just gonna ask if you had seen
phenomenal.
that. I know I recommend it to anybody with kids, basically. I mean, I think it's a phenomenal documentary for anybody with ADHD, but it felt so. I feel like it asked all the questions that
I've basically
we've
seen
been asking.
every documentary about any kind of neuro difference. You know, there's another one, Life in Pictures for autism. Like, it's just
all right.
phenomenal, right?
List of extra links in the show notes. Okay, cool.
No, gosh, sorry. So it's just going to be this
I love
huge,
resources. It's great, right?
No, it is great. It is actually. I've actually used those notes many times. But I'm on this huge tangent right now. Just like that, our brains are not broken. I love that title. That there is nothing wrong with us. So if the first line treatment is a stimulant, this is supposed to help us focus. A lot of people will say, I've heard and read, you know, online, that kind of like numbs you a little bit, right? And like some people lose a little bit of their creativity or whatever else, or the fact that it's, you know, it takes a little bit to start working, and then it, you know, it works for a while, then it peaks, and then you have a crash afterwards. And I'm like, but there's nothing wrong with us. It's because our life, our society, our world that we have built and we are living in is boring. It's absolutely boring. You have to wake up, you got to brush your teeth, you got to wash your face, you got to feed the dog, like all the things you have to do are not exciting. There's no payoff. There's nothing what are we looking forward to? And then we end up with this existential crisis, right? And then we have depression and anxiety and all these different things because just the world is not built for us. So let's go ahead and take a pill so that we can like kind of be and fit ourselves so that we can focus and do the job we have to do. And so my feeling with, and again, I'm not being paid whatsoever, I'm not a spokesperson, but my feeling with atomoxetine is it just takes it down a little bit, but then there's no crash, there's no workup. You know, once you get into that 6 to 8 weeks, it's just like, it's a constant state. It doesn't stop. And so you're able to, that's just that little assist. And I was watching this, I'm not gonna be able to give you the name, I'll apologize, but you know how you end up like down a rabbit hole and all of a sudden you're watching a webinar that was made for physicians and pharmacologists in Canada?
As one does, yes.
As one does. See, years ago, I wouldn't have said these weird things. I'd be like, oh my gosh, like nobody's going to, no, I'm so strange. But right now, I am currently experiencing skill regression, which we can talk about in just a moment. And, you know, I love that I found this little, I love the people that you find online and you just go, oh my God. I think this person is Jeremy Andrew Davis on Instagram. And he was doing this, he's an advocate for like disabled people. Anyway, he was doing this little skit about skill regression, which I hope I can make it back to that. But let's get back over here. So yeah, so I feel like the atomoxetine. You're with me. I know you're with me. Hold on. Oh, there's one little loop I didn't close.
I just like the running commentary.
This is how it is. This is inside my brain, right? I'm like letting it all out. This is how we are, people. Embrace your beautiful selves. So that's where I'm at right now. I feel like my husband's like, you are more ADHD now that you know you're ADHD than you have ever been. And I'm like, you know, now I'm just trying to learn how to be fully myself. I'm trying to, I've repressed and pushed and like without even realizing I was doing it all those years of my whole life. So I'm having this huge, like, you know, midlife crisis. And I think the people that have these like big midlife crises, like these huge breakdowns, have not been living their true life. And it's just like, life's going to shake you and go, hey, you're not doing it. You're not doing the thing that you're here to do. And for me, that's what it feels like, is like, oh my gosh, I don't even know who I am. I mean, I have an idea, like I think, right? But I've not let Gina be Gina, you know, like, oh, I've got to be professional. You know, I'm a curly hair specialist, and I went into the business of like being a hairstylist. But you know, hairstylists have this like awful thing that everyone says that they're, you know, vapid and like, you know, like really not, what's the word I'm looking for? Not intelligent, right? Like you do that when you drop out of high school and you don't go to college, and like, you know, this is the stigma. And for me, I'm like, I am intelligent, and I'm not saying that to like, you know, I'm amazing or whatever else. No, I am an intelligent person, and I find things fascinating. I find things interesting, and I have a lot of passions, and I also like doing hair. Like, don't tell anybody. Shh, don't let anybody know.
Oh my God, I love that. Right? But I think it speaks to so much of, you know, so much of the issues around giftedness, right?
Yes.
In terms of, you know, because I was in the gifted program, many of us were, or at least, you know, it's like the problems that we have with intellect, right? It's so many of us have that feeling of like, I know I am very, very smart, but I'm not able to show it in traditional ways. I'm not able to show it in ways that matter. And even when I am able to show it in ways that matter, nothing we accomplish is good enough anyway, right? Yeah. So even if I was a doctor, or, you know, I've had people who were on here who were doctors who were complaining about the fact that they, you know, couldn't clean their bathroom, and it was like, well, don't you get a pass? right so it's like, it doesn't matter who we are or what we're doing, we still feel like colossally in unworthy, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm
Oh,
like, where is
yeah.
that coming from? Is that coming
Yeah.
from just being called gifted at a very young age and being saddled with this expectation of ourselves? Is
Yeah.
it something inherent to the neurodivergent brain? Like, I often wonder, is there something about seeking dopamine and always being unsatisfied that
Yeah.
comes with the boredom, you know, all the stuff you were talking about, that boredom, that need to stimulate constantly translates into a feeling of always being short of accomplishment, right? Never being
Yeah.
good enough, always being a little bit behind. I
Or
think
even if
all
it's just in our
interrelated,
own
right?
head, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not even necessarily the world or anybody telling you that you're behind and you're not good enough. It is internal. It's a
Yeah.
constant like, oh, I'm just, that wasn't good enough. That wasn't my best work. That wasn't, I could do better than that. You know, like who am I trying to prove this to? Myself? I don't know. But as far as this whole, you know, being a hairstylist thing, I was like, yeah, no, if I'm going to do this, I am going to be the absolute smartest hairstylist. I'm going to talk about the chemistry and the structure of hair, which I find fascinating. Like I'm like,
Of course you do.
it's so fascinating to me. And then like I do this thing, and I know you guys can't see me, but I like push up the center of my
You're
glasses, and I go,
the
well,
geekiest hairstylist
well.
out there. I like that's kind of actually a really good branding if you're looking to rebrand. Just be
I
like,
know, I kind of am.
nerd,
I'm like,
right?
wait a minute, which
Yeah.
neurodivergent geeky hairstylist, you know, the cultivated curl, no, the neurodivergent geeky hairstylist. Like, what are you talking about? But yeah, I had to differentiate myself. Oh, first of all, I grew up in a hair salon, so this wasn't like I just decided out of nowhere to do hair. I grew up in a hair salon. My dad went to beauty school. My mom went to beauty school. I grew up literally in the back room of a hair salon. So I've been around this my entire life. I've heard how salon conversations go. And like I've talked to my mom, who I think is an intelligent woman as well, but she would also say like, you know, you have to do a good job. The client is paying you to do a good job, and you can't actually focus on like there's a lot of science and chemistry and math going on in there if people don't even realize that's what's actually happening. At least in my chair it is, but that's what's happening there, and it's all just, you know, for beauty, and it's like it's all just for you want to look good, and but there's so much more involved in the service itself. You know, you're mixing up chemicals and you're all the different things, and you actually have to focus on the placement of the color or the placement of the foils and the angle that you're cutting the hair and all the things you have to focus on. You cannot actually have a deep conversation and do these things that take a lot of focus. So we keep the conversation light. And that's what she, you know, my whole life, she's like, you just keep the conversation light. You know, you always bring it back to like, oh, I heard you got a new puppy. And, you know, and I'm just like, I can't, oh God, I cannot, please. Oh my gosh. Oh, how's your granddaughter doing? Oh, that's so amazing. I can't do it. So I remember when I was in beauty school, I actually was like super like I'm gonna learn everything. I'm gonna, you know, be the best beauty school student there ever was, because that's what I do. And I wanted to put a sign on the station that said, "Please do not talk to me," because one, I didn't want to do the stupid like talk. I didn't want to talk about the puppies and the, you know, the weather and the who cares. I don't want to talk about that. I'm focusing on learning how to do your hair. Do you want a good haircut? Do you want a haircut? First of all, shut up. Shut up. Let me do my job. I'm learning right now. I'm a student, you know. And of course, the instructors will be like, Gina, you have to also learn the art of small talk and conversation. I'm like, oh my God, this is what's going to kill me. This is what is going to do me in. But you know, I learned how to do it. But every once in a while, a client would come in and like they just seemed interesting. Like, now that I know I'm ADHD, now that I know how we work in our community, we're like sparkling diamonds to each other, you know. And every once in a while there'd be like a sparkling diamond in my chair, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna take a risk and say something interesting. And like then they'd be like, oh my gosh, and they would say something back to me, and then of course my haircut now is taking an hour and a half because I'm standing off to the side. My hands are flying in the air. You can't actually, I'm Italian too as well. Like you can't like have your hands flying in the air while you're talking about things because you're being so expressive and you're like really passionate about the thing that you're talking about because the hair is sitting over there being uncut while your hands are flying around. So it's like, Gina, get back to this chair, go back over behind the hair, you know. And so my clients now know, like when Gina goes quiet, she's thinking, I'm looking at my angles and everything else. And all of a sudden I'll be like, oh my gosh, ba, 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 and we go on and on and on. So like over the years, I've been doing hair for 17 years now. Over the years, I've discovered I've just collected this like gorgeous little collection of just beautiful gems, sparkly gems. And most of them have no idea that they are ADHD. But I do. I know that they are now. But a lot of them actually will say that they are. In fact, I have to say this because it's hilarious. At least I think it's hilarious because you know how quirky we are. So I had one client who I just felt like I could talk to her about it. And I was just like, yeah, I got recently diagnosed with ADHD. And, you know, I was gifted and all that, blah, 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 blah. And she goes, you know, I knew you were gifted the moment I sat down in your chair. And I was like, what? How did you know that? And she says, what's the active ingredient in Olaplex again? I was like, oh, bisamidaprolyl diglycoldimulate. And I went, oh, yeah, right. Which is why I write articles for, you know, Read Curl Magazine, at Instagram at Read Curl. Curl Magazine is the name of the magazine. I write articles all about, like, everybody's always asking me, what's the science of hair? Or what is this specific thing, you know? And then the other day, I just went down this rabbit hole and I was so excited because I discovered a problem that one of my clients was having and she had to go to a dermatologist and the dermatologist couldn't figure it out, but she gave her this other thing that didn't seem like it was quite right. So it took me down this like long research rabbit hole and I discovered this like really rare fungus that was growing in her hair. And I was like, this is so cool. It's fungus. Now you have to throw away all your bed sheets and like disinfect everything that you own and go to a dermatologist and specifically say this name so that they can be like, oh, because it's so rare. And I was like on cloud nine for like 3 days. I still can't.
Right? Because we found the solution, right? That's the ultimate, right?
Yeah,
we found the
dopamine.
I know. That's so cool. You know, I feel like I love this. You know, we talk a lot about jobs. I feel like I talk a lot about being a journalist and how journalism felt really, really great for ADHD. And I feel like probably most people who work in newsrooms have ADHD. Teachers is another one, nurses. But hairstylists, like the more you talk about it, I'm like, it really is tailor-made for somebody with ADHD. Like you're standing, every head is a different head, right? It's like every person who walks in that door is somebody different. But also I love all this stuff. I was just gonna say it's so artistic, but then there's also like the science, and the and I'm like, it's perfect.
There really actually are. I know so many hairstylists now that are ADHD, and I'm like, of course you are. Of course you are. Of course we all are. And you know, I've been doing this again. I say for 17 years, and within that 17 years, I have traveled all over the world, teaching on stages, became a brand manager. I trained staff. I found educators. I was in charge of the entire team for the West Coast for a little while I was pregnant with my first one, which I thought that I was going to go back to traveling 4 days a week after I had the baby. As soon as I saw the baby, I was like, I will never, ever, ever, ever leave you. And, you know, I had to quit that position. Then I was like, because I was teaching hair color and I was teaching all these different things and becoming a stage artist. And then I was like, what do I want to do now? Like what am I going to do? I have to always reinventing myself, right, within my career. And I was like, you know what I really, really love and what I wish I could have done from the beginning? I love working with curly hair. I just love it because curly hair lives in 3D. Straight hair lives in 2D. And 3D, I can create like sculpture. I cut it dry. I can see the shape happening as I'm creating. And it's so fulfilling for me. And I was like, I think I'm going to do that. And a friend of mine was like, is that a good business choice? Like if you just cut curly hair? And I'm like, I don't care at this point. Like that's what I'm going to do. And it's been like one of the best things, you know. I got on, I became an advisor for Curl Magazine for the year of 2020, which was like the worst year to possibly be doing anything, you know. But I cut Dr. Jen Gunter's hair for the cover of that, and I like got this really cool it's just been really, really, really cool. I've just enjoyed that, and it's allowed me to get super geeky, and I love my work. And then I realized that the majority of the people that stick around with me are neurodivergent themselves. And so then I look at my board every day, and I've decided I only see 3 people a day. That's all I'm going to do, because that's all I want to do. Like, I still want to have some energy when I get home to see my kids and stuff. I'm just not going to like work myself to death. I'm just not going to. So this is what I charge. It gives me a fair wage. This is what it is. This is how we go it. And by the way, in 2020, when all the salons were closed in California, we were closed for like a total of like 6 months. Devastating. It was devastating. And I had already been thinking I wanted to make a course on curly hair, because you know how if we're having to say the same thing over and over and over, it's just really boring. So I was seeing clients. A new client would come in, and I would say the same thing over and over, do the teaching, right? And I was like, after a while, I'm like, I can't do this. Or I'd get to the end of the day, and at the time I was seeing like 6 clients a day. At the end of the day, I would think that I had said the thing, but this person wasn't getting the best service, because I thought that I said it, and I did. I said it to the first 2 people. And then as the day went on, I was saying less and less and less, and they weren't getting like the full benefit. And I was like, if I make a course, then I can have them watch this before they come in, and they can learn all the things, they can hear all the stuff, and I'll be fresh every time. And so that was in my mind, but I didn't know. It was too big of a task to like, it was overwhelming. I really wanted to do it. 2020 comes down, everything is shut down. And I immediately go into like, okay, I'm going to put this together. Like right now, I put it together. I started selling a small version of it. And then I like added some more stuff, and I sold that. And then I added more. There was coaching element to it. So there's live coaching videos on there. And then I did that, and I was like, this is going to be amazing. And then all of a sudden I hit burned out. And that's when my breakdown happened. And I was like, oh my God, thank the heavens that I had the ability to make that program when I did. Because if anybody asked me to make it now, 6 months ago, last year, the program would not exist, because I just couldn't. I can't even imagine doing that right now. Just we are so amazing that when we have everything, we line up and we do the thing, and then we put it out in the world, and then all of a sudden it's like, I don't even know how I would do that. I have no idea how I did it.
Right. Well, it's because the interest element is gone now, and it's been replaced. It's like Tamara Rosier talks about in the book with the interest quadrant and the importance quadrant. Yeah. Like, it's like when it suddenly there's things that I've done too where I'm like, I could never do that now because I've already done it. So therefore the interest is gone. And so now it's just a thing that's important. Right. So it's like half the battle is just being able to do the thing and convince just to show yourself you can.
Well, also because I had to. We were down to the wire. Like there was no income coming in. Like there was that scarcity, that like last minute, that like immediacy took over. And my family didn't see me for 2 months. Like I was just up in my office, just edit. I taught myself how to edit video. I don't even remember how to do it anymore. But like at the moment, I made that happen.
But, yeah, that was kind of the podcast for me too. I would like hyper focused on how to sound edit and microphones and I was obsessed in the beginning. And now I'm like, oh yeah, I had to outsource all of that because it got too hard and boring. But in the beginning, it was like, oh my God, I would spend hours and hours and hours doing all of it.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. So okay. But you do see clients. If somebody lives in the Sacramento area, they can see you as a real life client, right?
I actually have people who drive a couple hours to come down and see me. I've got a client that lives in New Mexico, a client lives in Idaho, and they like fly in, which is kind of cool.
Oh,
it's really
amazing.
Cool. Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So I'll definitely have links to your website and the courses. You have the Frizz to Fab course, and there's another one, right? What is the other one called?
The Frizz to,
Refresh Your Curls, right?
Oh, that one I still haven't, like Refresh Like a Boss. That one I was actually putting together right when my breakdown happened. And I haven't been able to pull myself back to do it. I'm like, you have to do it. You got to do it. You got to do it. I just haven't been able to pull myself back to do it. But I have the Wash Day Blueprint, which is my big, like the one that I have people go through so that they hear all the information that I have and just like all the good stuff. And I walk you through like, 4 weeks of like how to like step by step, little by little, take, build your routine, build your routine, build your routine. And I've just heard from, I know it's a bit much for some people, but like what I've learned is like for us, it's not a bit much. It's, it goes into like all the way through. You learn so much because that's what I can't do it if it's not that. But then the Frizz to Fab was like, I need to have a little program. Like some people just go like, oh my gosh, 165. Like, I don't know off the bat, like, I don't even know who you are. And I'm like, well, take this little tiny one. And like, you can figure out, am I the kind of person that like you would even want to like work with? And it's like, only an hour of your time. So I did that one, and that was really cool. I wish I had the motivation to make the other one.
It's not even just motivation. It's like, I just wish I could clone myself, so that like multiple versions of me could go in all the different directions that I want to go in at all times. I'm like, what is that?
I know, right?
Is that right? But I feel like that's what it feels like when you're just like, I have so many ideas. And I want to do them all right now because I know if I don't do them all right now, it's not going to get done. And I don't know which one to do first. And then you just end up doing nothing because you're burnt out. And then it's like, here we go again.
Yes,
right? It's like the
I know.
ADHD
My husband's like,
life cycle.
stop taking things on. Stop taking things on. And I had to tell him recently, I'm like, you know what? Now that you know that I have ADHD, your oldest daughter has ADHD, and our little one probably has it as well, but she's going to get diagnosed again with the rest of the diagnosis next year. Like, and you know that everybody in my family we discovered has ADHD, and my dad's dyslexic. Like it's all, the same thing. And I'm like, now that you know all this, you have to realize it is impossible for me to not take on new things. But what I need you to do, what I need help with, is to realize that I can't take on any more, that I need to finish this. Either I need to quit it or I need to finish it before I take on a new thing. Remind me of all the things that I'm doing, because I forget, like life, taking care of children, being, a wife and maintaining a relationship, taking care of animals, going to work. Those are all things that take a lot of mental energy. And I forget that that's, a commitment that I have to do, that those are things that are going to always take energy. And there's not enough left over to do all the things I want to do. So I have to choose them systematically, like one by one. And also realize, now that I know what ADHD is, I'm not taking on a new role that's going to be like a long-term thing, because I know that won't work for me. It has to be this short little thing. There has to be a finite time. Like I just volunteered to direct the 1st and 2nd grade play next spring. And I'm so excited about it because there's 11 rehearsals plus tech week. Yes, it's going to be exhausting. It is going to be stressful. I'm going to have to wrangle all these like little 1st and 2nd graders. But guess what? It's one performance. And at that performance, all of the families are going to go, oh my God, because how can you not, the little kids acting on stage, like doing Winnie the Pooh. What? Like, oh my God. And they're going to be so amazing. Thank you so much, Gina. And then I'm going to get all the dopamine and I'm going to feel amazing. And that's what it's for. And then I'm going to, next thing,
Right. I was going to say, I used to do that with my son's, with my kids' elementary school with their play. And it would be like, and then I would sleep. I'd be so exhausted and I would sleep.
Oh, yes.
And then, but immediately I would be like, I'm bored.
Yeah, exactly.
So
what's the next thing?
Fast.
What's
right?
the next thing?
Exactly.
It's so
it would
fast.
be like, I can't wait to sleep for a week. I can't wait to sleep for a week. And then the next day I would be lying around so exhausted and I'd be like, okay, now what? What do I do now? Like, it's just, and I'd be like, right? It's that compulsion. I totally get it.
Yeah.
So now I know you talked about your sparkly gems, but do you have a name for ADHD? If you could come up with an alternate name?
Gosh, I mean, it would be so much easier to keep the current, ADHD, right? Because we're all there. But like attention dysregulation, because that's what we have. It's a dysregulation of attention. We don't have deficit. It's definitely not a deficit. It is a lot of attention that needs to be regulated. So it's attention dysregulation, hypodopamine, because we are low dopamine. We don't have dopamine. We're always searching. That's why the attention needs to be regulated, because we're always looking for more dopamine. It's constantly seeking. And so then I don't know if the hypodopamine is an HD or if that's just an H, and then the D becomes like disposition, or disorder. I don't like disorder. I don't want it to be a disorder. Like, it's a disposition.
yeah.
Like, we're disposed, we're predisposed, right? To be this way. It is the way that we are. Like, and so here's how ADHD and gifted, which I think giftedness is actually in the future going to be discovered as another level on the autism spectrum. I think giftedness is autistic adjacent. And because we always approach these things like, we know everything that exists in the universe right now. No, 10 years from now, we're going to discover that we don't know anything. So, anyway, so here's just how nerdy, I push my glasses up for those that are listening, how nerdy I am. Disposition means the predominant or prevailing tendency of one's spirit, natural, mental, and emotional outlook or mood, characteristic attitude. Are you kidding me? Disposition, of course. Yeah. So
that is a really good one.
Attention, dysregulation, hypodopamine, disposition.
I love it.
I also love, there was another guest, and I was searching and searching frantically, and I couldn't find, because I could never find who said what. And I just listened to all of them, so fast. Someone gave it an actual name, like there's dyslexia, right? And someone gave it an actual, just like a name that was like Greek or something like that, or maybe it was French. I think it was maybe French. I don't know. And I was like, oh, that's beautiful. Like I have da-ba-da-da-da. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's what I always feel like is great about autism too, is that it's not, it's not a term that is defined by its deficits.
Exactly.
And so there's expansion there. There's so much room for description of what it is and who we are. Right. And so it's just everything about the term ADHD is just so like, you are a fuck up, basically. Right. And so it's like, how can, and so much of this is about reframing that it's like, it's so tragic. Although I did have a guest recently who talked about, she was the same thing, where she was like, I don't want to change ADHD because the acronym has meant so much to me, right? I'm willing to just accept the acronym. But she was also like, I find it very apropos that if somebody with ADHD has like screwed up how to even talk about ADHD, right? Like that we couldn't kind of like, that even the name feels so off and just like it tumbled out and nobody really understands what it means and it doesn't seem to make any sense. And she's like, there's something appropriate about that. And I was like, yeah, you're right.
I guess so.
I like that. Hypodopamine disposition. I liked it. That's a good one. I really like that. Well, thank you so much, Gina. This has been wonderful. I loved listening to you explain. I feel like I feel like you just explained a lot of our experiences so well. So I feel like that's what I think listeners benefit so much from hearing that, right? Where you're just like, oh my goodness, you've just explained what is happening in my brain right now. You've just explained what's happening in my body. And then that's kind of that unmasking too, which is like, we were always experiencing that. We just didn't have the ability to put words to it, right? And so it's like, one of the things that I love about unmasking, especially around my husband and my kids and my family, is the fact that I can now be like, oh, this is why I'm doing this, or this is why and so I loved when you were talking about like the little commentary about like chasing the thought and being like, okay, it's coming to me, there's an image, and then the words are going to come, right? It's like following that. Following out, like, it's like, that's that ability to kind of say out loud what we had always kept to ourselves and tamped down and pushed down. And so now it's like, oh, this is me and all of my wonderful eccentricities.
So eccentric. Yes, exactly. Yes.
I know. So thank you for being eccentric with me for this hour. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for creating a space that allows people to be their true eccentric selves. I mean, that's what my journey is right now, is like, how do I uncover all the layers of like all this weirdness that I've been depriving the world of?
I love it. All right. Thank you.